Local, trusted. This is News 3 at 6 on KBTX.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. I'm Clay Falls. We've got a packed show for you tonight, but first we want to send things over to sports and to Tyler Shaw for a recap of the Aggie game at Alabama today.
Yeah, thanks, Clay. Now, week 2 of the season and maybe the biggest game on A&M's schedule. We've got a top 15 matchup with the number 13 Aggies traveling to second-ranked Alabama. There's Nick Saban and his former assistant Jimbo Fisher before the game. Down 14-0 in the first, Kellen Mond finds Anaya Smith, and Smith somehow stays in bounds, tiptoes down the sideline to put A&M on the board. Aggies get a turnover, and then how about this? Former Iola Bulldog Ryan Rennick with his first career touchdown at A&M. You can hear the cheers all the way from Iola. Game tied at 14. It was all Alabama after that. Clay will have full highlights of that game later in sports.
Earlier today, President Donald Trump tweeted that he is feeling well as he undergoes treatment for the coronavirus. The president's physician said he's doing great, but there are conflicting reports and new questions about the timeline of his diagnosis. Natalie Brand reports from Walter Reed National Military Medical Center.
The president's physician and a team of doctors from Walter Reed said Saturday the president is doing well.
He's in exceptionally good spirits. The quote he left us with was, "I feel like I could walk out of here today."
But a source familiar with the president's health told reporters vitals over the last 24 hours were very concerning, and the next 48 hours will be critical in terms of his care, adding, quote, "We're still not on a clear path to a full recovery." CBS News has also confirmed the president was administered supplemental oxygen at the White House Friday before he was flown to Walter Reed in the evening. It's not clear if the president was having trouble breathing at that time. President Trump's physician, Dr. Sean Conley, deflected questions on that topic.
He's not on oxygen right now, that's right.
He's not received any at all?
He's not needed any this morning today at all.
And new questions are now emerging about the timeline surrounding the president's diagnosis.
Just 72 hours into the diagnosis now.
In a White House statement issued shortly after, Dr. Conley said he incorrectly used the term 72 hours and should have said day 3, adding that the president tested positive Thursday night. Earlier that same day, President Trump attended a fundraiser in New Jersey. He traveled to Minnesota the day before.
It's still unclear exactly when President Trump began displaying symptoms, and Dr. Conley declined to answer a question about when the president last tested negative for the virus.
I'm not going to get into all the testing going back, but he and all the staff routinely are tested.
As the White House continues contact tracing, the list of those in the president's circle who have now tested positive has grown. Chris Christie is among the latest. He's now one of 8 people who attended last Saturday's White House ceremony for Supreme Court nominee Amy Coney Barrett, who have since tested positive. Natalie Brand, CBS News, Bethesda, Maryland.
Calvert ISD has canceled all in-person learning for 2 weeks after a staff member tested positive for COVID-19. Students will complete assignments virtually through academic learning packets from October 5th through the 17th, according to the district's Facebook page. In-person classes will resume on October 19th. The Brazos County Health District reported 55 new cases of COVID-19 today. 62% of these new cases are from the 18 to 24-year-old age group. Active cases are down by 2 from yesterday's numbers, with 569 reported today. Tonight, 10 Brazos County residents remain hospitalized. Just under 6,000 have recovered. Here's a look at active cases across the Brazos Valley. Montgomery County reported a slight increase in active cases yesterday, with more than 1,500 active cases there. Madison County is now reporting 15 active cases, and Washington County is reporting 33. Expanded visitation guidelines for nursing homes, assisted living, and hospice facilities began last week under an order from Governor Greg Abbott, but still, some want to see those restrictions relaxed even further than that. News 3's McKenna Rodriguez talks to a local family taking advantage of the new rules, but still hoping for more change.
In sickness and in health, Penny and Ron Kipp have been inseparable for 45 years.
She's my world, and my life
rotates around her.
Penny has been living in a nursing home after suffering a stroke in December. COVID-19 has made it hard, but not impossible to visit.
She'd be up in the wheelchair, and I could talk to her through the window.
Daughter Shannon Williams says it's been a struggle for everyone.
She said, I want you, and I couldn't hear her, so I said, you want me to what? She said, I want you to come inside.
Williams joined Texas Caregivers for Compromise, a group working for change to care facility guidelines.
This should never happen again, where people are isolated and kept away from their families, especially the vulnerable.
311 Isolation Kills 2 signs traveling across the state now sit in Williams' yard.
The names on these signs are people who are separated from their families, or they're people who have actually died in facilities apart from their families.
The isolation is devastating to the patients, very, very harmful. And I can see it affecting my wife already.
Under new guidelines, Ron is now a designated essential caregiver.
I was able to hug her, with masks on.
He hopes more changes are coming.
It was wonderful. It was just wonderful. That's all I can say.
In Bryan, McKenna Rodriguez, News 3.
Concerns over the coronavirus lead to a big change for one annual event today. The 15th annual Boonville Day festivities were held as a free drive-through event as a safety precaution. This year's event was dedicated to the frontline workers in the Brazos Valley. Performers and vendors lined the parking lot of the Brazos Valley Museum of Natural History. Visitors were able to drive or walk around and have a fun but socially distant experience.
And usually we have lots of people that come out. We have a chuck wagon competition. We have a buffalo stampede, but because of COVID-19, we're doing a drive-through this year, and we still wanted to, have the public be able to come out and have some fun experiences celebrating Boonville Days.
Visitors were also able to take home a free souvenir activities packet as well as enter a raffle for a 24-karat coin. The Texas Renaissance Festival is back in Plantersville area, but there are some traffic suggestions you need to know about before heading that way. Festival organizers suggest you enter the grounds from the north to avoid congestion. They recommend coming from Highway 105 in Plantersville and then south on FM 1774 to the main festival gates. The festival also suggests not taking back roads once close by, as many local roads are closed to through traffic. You can also get up-to-date traffic alerts on their social media pages at Tex Renfest. Coming up, Erica Page says we'll see plenty of sunshine over the next few days. And after the break, we're checking in with local farmers to get their perspective on the damp start to fall. From the Ground Up is next.
Fly-by cameras are sponsored by Norman G Tractor. Nobody beats Norman G Tractor.
You're watching News 3 at 6 on KBTX.
Rain isn't always a good thing in agriculture. Last week we told you how cotton farmers here have desperately needed hot weather to keep their crops dry right before harvest. While the recent rains may have hurt some farmers, many ranchers have actually been loving this damp start to fall. Here's more in this week's From the Ground Up.
The prices have been up and down and up and down and up and down.
Bobby Curtin's family has been ranching in Brazos County for decades. Through floods, droughts, and everything in between, they've weathered the ups and downs with their cattle.
We've gotten rains through the summer, a little bit here and there. It worried us several times. But overall, once you get a rain, you sleep real good for the next few nights. You get along all right.
Curtin says this has been an up start to the season. Like any other aspect of life, COVID-19 has hurt the cattle industry.
It's still not back like it should be, but we've had pretty decent weather right here in this particular area.
The damp start to the fall season will help when it comes time to sell, though.
We're totally dependent on when we get rain and how much of it. We can't run an efficient cow-calf operation without grass.
Making for happier cows and more profit for the Brazos Valley rancher to keep them in business and feeding us here at home. I'm Max Crawford, looking at Central Texas agriculture from the ground up.
From the Ground Up is sponsored by Producers Cooperative, proudly serving agriculture since 1943.
And speaking of those fall rains, we may see a few trying to work back into the Brazos Valley. Some of it has to do with a little bit more activity in the tropics, and others with a cold front that's set to roll through tomorrow. We'll get you all those details coming up next.
people. It's all about home, working together, loving our own. KBTX, it's the time that we share. It's for you, it's for me, people who care. Brazos Valley, this is for you. News 3, this is your news.
News 3 weather from the Pinpoint Forecast team is sponsored by First Financial Bank. Local bankers putting you first. And now, local weather.
We've been enjoying a comfortable start to the weekend, and in fact, we're going to continue to see this beautiful weather translate into your Sunday as well. Look at the state of Texas. Most of us, the warmest we are right now sits in the low to mid 80s across East Texas, and then you slip a little further off towards the west, and that's where a little bit more of that heat is bottled up. But take a look up towards the north. Minneapolis checking in at 49 degrees at this hour. Most of that cooler air bottled up behind this next weather maker, starting to generate a lot of that showery activity towards the Great Lakes region. But it's this cold front that we have to look forward to as we head towards tomorrow, and it will bring us a little bit more of that cooler air. Now, frost advisory, not that kind of cold air, but we are going to be seeing those temperatures dipping down, relatively chilly for this time of the year. A lot of folks this morning were able to make it to the mid and upper 40s. Centerville checking in at 42 degrees. A lot of other folks able to manage to get down towards the low to mid 50s pretty much all across the Brazos Valley, and we'll see if we can't repeat that story once again tonight and potentially even into your Monday. That's really where we're going to see the coolest air, I think, of the next several days, trying to work back into the Brazos Valley. Beyond that, the pattern starts to change just a bit more. Winds turn back out of the south, and we were building in a little bit more of that Gulf moisture. As that happens, it keeps your temperatures, especially through the overnight hours, from falling a whole lot. So by the middle part of this next week, expect your overnight lows to once again be back to where about they should be, into the mid 60s and then potentially even the upper 60s as we start to see this pattern shift just a bit more. That cold front that's expected to roll through is associated with an area of low pressure that sits in the northern part of the country, but it quickly shifts eastward, and essentially high pressure off towards the west and a high pressure system that sits down towards the south and the east basically has a good control of our weather. You notice the jet stream not dipping quite as far south, and basically that means we're not bringing in a whole lot more of those cold fronts, and instead we're kind of getting a little bit of a weakness in this weather pattern. We've got the high pressure system off towards the east and the one westward, but really nothing that kind of settles or anchors in right over the Brazos Valley. So that does mean we're working in a little bit more of the humidity and potentially a little bit more of that heat. Now the hope is we can maybe turn into a little bit more of that humidity, a couple isolated chances for rain. One comes through tomorrow as that cold front comes on through. We largely stay dry, I think, a lot of us for the rest of this week, but by Friday, we may be tapping into a little bit more of that Gulf moisture, and that may help to bring us some slightly better chances for rain. But really, most of Texas is probably going to stay within that less than half of an inch of rain, while a lot of those bigger tropical downpours look to sit further off towards our east. So let's talk about the tropics, because that is where we're going to be fueling a little bit more of this moisture that's trying to work back in. The first system has no impacts to the state of Texas or really the U.S. coastline at this time. We just got in the latest advisory from the National Hurricane Center. Winds now down from 70 miles per hour when this system made landfall in the Yucatan to 60 miles per hour. It's interacting with a lot of that land. So we are going to likely see a little bit more of that weakening continue. But the system that we do need to monitor at least a little bit closer is the one that sits just south of Hispaniola. As we get through the weekend and as it continues to progress further off towards the north and the west, it enters into a more favorable area where we may see a little bit more of that tropical development trying to happen. Tropical depression by next week, not totally off the table with Invest 92L. And you'll notice most of the forecast models take it into the southern Gulf. Where it goes from there still has to be worked on a little bit more with our forecasting, but of course we are going to keep close eyes on it. For now, we're just kind of eating away slowly but surely at that hurricane list, because we are unfortunately still within the middle of the hurricane season. Temperature-wise tonight, though, no tropical moisture out there. We're sitting into the upper 70s, right around low 80s. Winds are breezy out of the south. That is going to keep some of that moisture working back in through the overnight hours tonight. So we may see a little bit of that patchy fog trying to work in first thing tomorrow morning. So if you have to be out on the roadways early, kind of keep that in mind. Cold front comes through the middle of the afternoon tomorrow. May spark a couple isolated showers there. And then, of course, we're going to be stepping into a sunny week for the most part as we head into next week, temperature-wise, trying to get closer to about the mid and upper 80s before the upcoming weekend.
Thank you very much, Erica. A Texas artist is using her personal experiences to raise awareness for breast cancer in a unique way. Betty Cross has the story.
This Texas artist is unsealing more than cans of paint for her latest project. Marnie Vollenhals is also opening her heart.
This is really important to me.
And sharing what gave her hope after getting a breast cancer diagnosis that changed her body and her life forever.
I went through 22 rounds of chemo and 3 weeks of radiation, 2 major surgeries. So it's a long journey.
Long enough for this muralist to be able to see the big picture. Instead of focusing on the pain and setbacks of cancer, Marnie started concentrating on the little things that could make her eyes light up.
It made me feel good to be with my friends or my family, and that's what the inspiration is behind this wall.
Marnie's canvas is a giant wall at the Kendra Scott flagship store on South Congress. She's creating 5 faces of breast cancer. They're not just diverse in race and ethnicity. They also reflect the different choices women make about being bald and beautiful or wearing a turban or wig.
I just wanted everyone to feel like they were a part of this experience.
The mural will help raise awareness outside the store. Inside, Kendra Scott is raising money for breast cancer research through sales of a Yellow for Pink jewelry collection.
20% of those proceeds will then go towards our $250,000 research grant, which supports metastatic breast cancer research.
Marnie's cancer is now in remission, but memories of her long recovery are as vivid as these paint colors. She remembers wanting to feel normal and is creating images that reflect that desire to occasionally transform from patient to princess.
Just putting on some makeup, earrings, a pretty necklace, a cute outfit, and then a dinner with your friends is the best.
Marnie thinks the support of friends and family was critical in her recovery and hopes everyone touched by breast cancer will find comfort in her art and story.
I just wanted people to get the sense of you're not in this alone.
2 local high school football players have returned to the field after they were injured in a crash last year. News 3's Jessica Grundling caught up with Gage Schwartz and Brant Roberts this past week about their comeback season.
I want you to watch over their whole team, their family, their friends, whoever was involved in the car accident.
In a Week 2 win over Elgin last season, Brant Roberts and Gage Schwartz weren't on the field with the Rudder Rangers, but on the minds of everyone. Gage in a wheelchair on the sideline, Brant still recovering in the hospital. The two involved in a fiery head-on collision earlier that week.
As we hit, I just went blank, and I couldn't move, and I didn't think I was gonna live, but God has a plan for everything.
It was a scary situation for sure, but everything happens for a reason. Woke me up.
The two would spend the season on the sideline together.
It sucks. Watching everybody.
It was very hard. I didn't really like it at all. We definitely leaned on each other, but I just hated that he had to be in the car with me.
After months of rehab, Brant recovered in time for baseball season, and now they're both back on the football field. Brant is the starting quarterback at Centerville, helping lead the Tigers to a 4-1 record so far this season. Gage back with the Rangers playing safety for a 1-0 Rudder squad.
It's been amazing. It's football has been my favorite thing my whole life, and it just feels great to be able to play again. I didn't think I was going to be able to play, so to be able to play again just feels great.
It feels great, I'm back and with my teammates, and like I never left.
Both not taking their final season of high school football for granted. Jessica Grundling, News 3.
Coming up next in sports, Aggie football took center stage on the SEC Game of the Week on CBS. Tyler Shaw will have full highlights from Texas A&M's game in Tuscaloosa.
Well, we knew it was going to be a challenge. 13th ranked Texas A&M on the road for the first time this year, and it doesn't get much tougher than playing in Tuscaloosa at number 2 Bama. The Aggies looking for their first win against Alabama since knocking off the Crimson Tide in Tuscaloosa back in 2012. A&M does not get off to a good start. Crimson Tide quarterback Mac Jones goes to the air and hits John Mechie. That's good for a 78-yard touchdown pass. Bama grabs an early 7-0 lead. The Tide add to that advantage later in the opening quarter. Najee Harris takes the handoff. He scores from 6 yards to make it a 14-0 Bama lead. The Aggies do come back, and it starts with a pretty special play from Aniyah Smith. He grabs them on pass and somehow is able to tiptoe and stay in bounds. That goes for a 47-yard TD, and Texas A&M cuts the lead. The defense comes up with a big play as DeMarvin Leal picks off the pass after Tyree Johnson tipped it. Leal would rumble down to the Alabama 17-yard line. That was his first career interception. On the next play, Mon throws a strike to former Iola Bulldog Ryan Rennick. That's a 17-yard TD, Rennick's first touchdown as an Aggie, ties the game at 14. The rest of the first half would belong to Bama. A Harris 2-yard touchdown run gave the Tide the lead back, and they follow that up with a Daniel Wright 47-yard interception return for a touchdown to make it 28-14. Late in the second, Jones finds Devontae Smith in the back of the end zone for a 2-yard TD toss. Alabama up 35-14 at the break. Texas A&M starts the scoring in the second half with the field goal, but Bama would bounce back with the big play. Jones goes deep to Jalen Waddle. They connect for an 87-yard touchdown. Alabama up 42-17. That was your score after 3. The Aggies do find the end zone in the fourth quarter as Mon hits Smith for a 14-yard touchdown. Mon throws for 318 yards in the game. This day belonged to Alabama. The Crimson Tide roll, beating Texas A&M 52-24.
Offensively, too, when you get in those games, how every play can matter because you're right there to score, another 20 points in the game, and got to take advantage of that and can't miss the field goals. But we cannot, give up the big plays on defense and what we did.
Now, next week, the Aggies will be back at home to take on the third-ranked Florida Gators. And speaking of the Gators, they were hosting South Carolina. Second quarter, we'll go quarterback Colin Hill finds Shi Smith, who spins into the end zone, and the Gamecocks tie the game up at 7 apiece. Gators respond towards the end of the half. Kyle Trask finds his reliable tight end, Kyle Pitts, on the slant. Pitts' second TD of the game. Gators up 24-14. Second half, Gators would not look back. Trask dumps it off to Kadarius Toney. He'll turn that into a 57-yard catch and run, takes it to the house, and number 3 Florida goes on to win 38-24. Number 21 Tennessee at home against Missouri. The Volunteers gave their fans a lot to cheer about today. Early in the second quarter, Tennessee's Eric Gray takes the handoff and scampers 20 yards to the end zone. Gives the Vols a 14-0 lead. Gray getting it done later in the opening half as he takes the pass from Jarrett Garantano and scores on a 13-yard TD reception. Tennessee led 21-6 at the break. Garantano would score on a pair of touchdown runs in the second half, including this sneak in the fourth quarter. Tennessee would top Missouri 35-12. Now in the Big 12, Baylor playing in just their second game of the season at West Virginia. We picked this one up late in the fourth quarter. Charlie Brewer hits Josh Fleeks, who is able to race to the end zone for a 34-yard touchdown. That ties the game at 14, and we're headed to overtime. Both teams score touchdowns in the first OT. Baylor gets the ball to start the second extra session, but Brewer's pass is picked off by Tyke Smith in the end zone. With the score, West Virginia would win, and they get it, courtesy of Lee Brown's 3-yard touchdown run. West Virginia beats Baylor 27-21. And an in-state battle between number 9 Texas and TCU. Second quarter, Max Duggan for the Horned Frogs on this keeper from 5 yards out, and TCU takes the lead 14-7. Longhorns quickly respond. Sam Ellinger goes across the middle to Brennan Eagles, and Eagles takes it 45 yards for the touchdown. All tied up at 14. But then in the fourth, TCU down by 3. Duggan breaks free, this time a 26-yard touchdown run. They take the lead. Texas would have a chance to win it from the 1-yard line, but Burton product D. Winters makes the initial contact. That helps force the fumble. TCU hangs on to win 33-31. We'll have even more highlights coming up tonight at 10 during Saturday Extra coverage. A little high school action as well with College Station playing on the road. We'll be right back after the break. First, here's a quick look outside from our Live by Network.
Well, it is a cooler evening out there if you are stepping out, and if you can, go outside and enjoy this beautiful sunset that we have in store. Temperature-wise, all across the Brazos Valley, a lot of us enjoying the upper 70s, right around the lower 80s. Again, winds are a little bit more on the breezier side, between about 10 and about 15 miles per hour, but we should see those winds subside as we continue on into the overnight. Temperature-wise, all across the area, low to mid 70s across our eastern counties, 80s as you head just a little bit further off towards the west. Once the sun goes down, you don't see a whole lot of clouds out there, so that will allow these temperatures to drop quickly. I think as you're wrapping up your evening plans, a lot of us going to be sitting into the upper 60s, and then once we get closer to about midnight, most of us will be making our way back down into about the lower 60s, and then it's the mid and upper 50s, I think, pretty much all across the board as we head into first thing tomorrow morning. Now, one thing to note, with those winds calming down and those clear skies in place, that may be just the perfect combination to get a little bit more of that fog trying to develop. It'll not likely be long lasting tomorrow, just given the fact that we do have the sunshine that's expected to work back in, but it might slow you down if you have to be out on the roadways first thing. Otherwise, the rest of your Sunday looks beautiful. Upper 70s and likely lower 80s for our northern counties. That's as that cold front starts to roll on through. Then it's the low to mid 80s pretty much for everybody else. One thing, though, we will be watching, there's not a lot of moisture in the atmosphere, but if this front can manage to squeeze out what little bit there is, we may at least see a couple of these light sprinkles trying to roll through. If you see rain tomorrow, it's probably not going to total to a whole lot, maybe a couple tenths of an inch at best, and then this rain clears on out of here and you're headed for a very quiet Sunday evening with winds back out of the north. But one thing we've been talking about is just kind of keeping an eye on the tropics. Again, we're not done with the hurricane season. It doesn't end officially until we get towards the end of November. And we'll be watching a couple of different systems. The first is Tropical Storm Gamma. You notice it doesn't make too much more of a northward progress once it re-enters the Gulf of Mexico because the pattern continues to take it further off towards the west. But one system we will kind of need to keep closer eyes on is Invest 92L. Not saying that it has direct impacts here to the Brazos Valley, but it is expected to work its way into the central Gulf and may bring us at least a little bit more of that moisture as we get towards the end of this next week. The latest update from the National Hurricane Center that came out at the top of the 7 o'clock hour, which we are very close to, notice it does up the odds that we see a little bit more development. So now it's at a high probability that we do see likely a tropical depression forming as we get in towards the beginning part of this next week, somewhere within this zone. So it certainly does bear watching as these models continue to gain a better perspective on how this overall pattern will continue to play out. We will continue to keep y'all updated on any of those bigger changes. But for now, again, here in the Brazos Valley and really for the Western Gulf, not expecting a whole lot of those impacts. Maybe a couple very isolated chances for rain as we're wrapping up the end of this next week. And the good news is the latest drought monitor says we don't really need a lot more of that rainfall to get where we should be. So in turn, we are going to be working those temperatures back up to the mid and upper 80s by this next week. And the potential is certainly there that we may get closer to about 90 degrees. And of course, you can find all of this wonderful information on your KBTX Pinpoint Weather app. And we'll keep you updated with the tropics as we get new information in.
Thank you very much, Eric. It looks like a beautiful week shaping up for all of us. That's our report for now. Thank you so much for joining us. Tune in tonight at 10. We'll see you then.